Stress, especially high stress, tends to isolate. We feel we want to solve the issues and problems of our life on our own. But what if we were to find strength by restoring and strengthening our relationships? Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Center of Calmness. Today, we are super blessed to have Babita Spinelli with us. Welcome, Babita.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me here.
Thanks so much for joining. If I might ask, how's the situation where you are? You're up in the Northeast, right?
I am. I am. I think it's been difficult. Stressful for a lot of people, but I think hopeful. Thinking about 2021 and the vaccine rolling out, but it's been tough.
I definitely understand that, and especially in the area around New York City, hit very hard. And with a lot of the measures being taken, it's just hard to even think back to what normal life was like, right?
Absolutely. People sitting with still a lot of fear and uncertainty, a lot of loss, and life looks differently. The city feels different. So people are really just trying to manage and navigate and find some of those small joys where they can and really try and look, inward as best as they can, considering, the environment.
Absolutely, and I hope that that environment will shift very soon. But in the meantime, we're left to find the solutions that we can, and actually, there's a substantial opportunity to find those either by looking within as well as looking within our network of relationships, both strong and or both close and distant relationships. But I wonder, Babita, if we might start just by kind of going through a bit of your journey because you've done so many things. So as we talked before the show began here, it would just be neat if you would give us just a brief, maybe 120-second tour of some of those major moves, right? And what moved you forward into in some of the changes that you made.
Sure, sure. Yeah. So, interestingly enough, I started off actually in publishing. I then transitioned and went to law school, and I was an attorney. And while I was an attorney, I then transitioned into corporate America, and I worked for like a big four firm. And I then transitioned and worked abroad, also for like a big law firm. When I was abroad, I decided I wanted to do some more meaningful work. So I did some asylum work, representing, refugees and individuals seeking asylum. And then I actually transitioned back into corporate America and I worked on Wall Street and I was an executive on Wall Street. Um, and at that time, again, I started to continue to feel unfulfilled. I was very successful. I felt like I had a rewarding career, but I knew that there was something that I wanted to do differently. And so I really started to think about that. I sought therapy to figure some things out. And then I sought a coach to help me with my accountability. And I transitioned into being a psychotherapist. I did my psychoanalytic training. I went back to school. I did all of my clinical hours, and I've been in private practice now for several years.
That is a tremendous journey, and you were able to accomplish so much. I wonder if you might just take us through some of the transition points real quick, particularly that one where as you were a practicing attorney and very successful, working abroad, where you decided that you wanted to begin working with the refugees that were interested in finding asylum, and really working to bring their lives onto a new level or a new path forward. What motivated you, or what maybe if you could take us to that moment where you made the choice to make that change from that lucrative law practice to even devoting a little bit of your time toward helping refugees.
Yeah, it happened with like a case that I'd been working on, and it was a female mutilation case. And that sort of opened the door of me wanting to do more of that asylum work. And I just realized that, there's a lot of hardship, and for individuals, coming from an immigrant family myself, I realized that it would just be really meaningful for me to just sort of really represent people who are suffering and really seeking a better life, and they are literally fleeing from some very challenging, difficult times in the countries that they're coming from. That it isn't so simple. So I, decided that I was just going to do something about it. And I know that it's so systemic. It's something that's so much larger. But I said, if I could just spend some time representing those individuals in some way, and if I could even just help a handful of people to be able to seek asylum and be granted asylum, what an amazing kind of contribution that I can make in some way.
That's outstanding. And would you have just a quick 30-second story that you might share for one of the individuals that you were able to work with and successfully bring them forward?
Sure. I remember that it was someone who had come in from Nigeria. So I'm in England doing this work, and it was Christmas Eve. And I'll never forget, I was called to go to the detention center. And, I went, it was really cold. It was sort of snowy. I still remember it. I mean, this is many years ago. And my heart broke. I remember sitting there, and he was describing why he had fled and what was going on in his village. And I remember, thinking something's got to be done about this. And, I remember being given such a hard time by the immigration officers about saying, he's going to be sent back. He's going to be sent back. But I would not give up. I would not give up. And I remember looking at case law and looking and finding the one thing that might be able to work. And it did. And so I got a beautiful letter from him, soon after that, years later, about his family and living life, the way he was living his life. And, it was very rewarding. But I'll never forget sitting there on Christmas Eve, and he's literally behind bars.
Wow, that's huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
And essentially through your support and the specific expertise and the element that you found for him, to be able to create such a dramatic shift and all of that help and effort you provided amplified so much in now the successful life that he was able to begin leading. That's
such working, right? He has a business, he's working, he has a family. And, again, that was so many years ago, but it really left an impact in terms of resilience and not giving up hope. And that there is possibility. There is possibility.
That's so huge. I did wanted to, we have one viewer commenting and greeting both of us, Babita, Dwayne Lair. Hi, Dwayne. Glad you're joining us tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to shift next to this other major shift that you mentioned, Babita, where you shifted completely away from the law and into psychotherapy. I mean, that's a huge change. I wonder what motivated such a big shift.
Sure. So I was going through a personal transition in my life around divorce, and I was also not feeling very fulfilled in my career. And I ended up seeking a therapist, and I was sitting with the therapist. And after several sessions, over time, as I'm getting more clarity, she said, "Have you thought about being a therapist?" And, I kind of looked at her, and she handed me a bunch of books, right? So Freud, Mahler, Winnicott, etc. This is the interesting part, TK. I broke my foot a week later because I kept thinking, how am I going to do this? I'm busy. I'm in consulting. I'm the corporate world. When am I going to have time to read this? Do I want to be a therapist? I broke my foot. So as Louise Hay would say, right, these things happen for reasons. And so because of my broken foot, I was forced to sit and read and really look inward. And I said to my therapist, I want to do this. How do I do this? So I went back and I did my, clinical and academic journey in psychotherapy, but that's how it started. It started by her suggesting it based on the things that I was telling her about what would feel meaningful for me. What were some of the things I would want to do in life? It kind of started there.
Neat. So if I understand that right, your therapist was taking you through an exploratory journey to find out what you attach, or where in your life you were able to find and then be able to deliver value and something meaningful back out to the world. And as it turns out, that meaningful contribution was to help others explore their scenarios and situations. That's quite profound. Your therapist is very wise.
I adore her, and this is why I wanted to also specialize in like relationship work, because that's what I come to her for. And I feel blessed, which is, even on my website, I actually literally I say it. I'm like, therapy changed my life.
That is so huge. And now you have so many certifications that I can't possibly read them all during the time we have here. But I think you're certified in at least 5 different
Mhm.
pretty deep methodologies of therapy, and really able to take folks from essentially a completely messed up relationship, if you will, just to be kind of broad about the comment, all the way into crystal clarity and constructive rebuilding of some of those relationships, if I understand it right.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So a lot of the individuals or couples that come to me, either there's like they really have either given up hope, or literally in high conflict situations, or even if it's just an individual, I say relationship therapy for one, as they're just trying to navigate, what's going on in their life with their partner and within themselves. So a lot of that inspiration was through my own therapeutic journey. But then, yes, I realized that in order for me to continue to do the kind of work that I want to do, I wanted to continue to learn and grow. And so part of the certifications was more my thirst and desire to be able to look at things and continue to offer things to the people that I work with. And everything has like gems. There's something that I can take that I feel like I'm applying just very uniquely because of who's in front of me and who I see.
That's cool. So you have quite a repertoire of potential techniques, and then it's a matter of what the individual or what the couple or group may present that in a way produces the best fit technique for their specific scenario. Now, if I could ask Babita, who would approach you as your ideal client that would reach out and seek your therapy and relationship support?
Mm-hmm. I love that question because there's that huge part of me that's like anyone, right? Like part of me that's just like, whoever comes in the door and has like sees the kind of work that I do, there's already that connection there and I want to work with them. But if I were to say that, who tends to come, who are the ideal clients, they tend to be couples that are either committed to really, they want to work on their relationship, and they may be dealing with, maybe there was infidelity in their marriage. There might have been abandonment to the relationship. So certain high conflict issues, or where they literally are on the brink of, do we divorce or not? So that is, the certain clients that come to me. And then I have other clients who come to me that are really dealing with some meaningful life transitions, be it career, similar to my situation, or maybe their relationship is ending and they want to really rebuild that. Or maybe they are struggling with sort of a blended family situation, or they're coming from they have a multicultural or biracial situation in their relationship, and they're trying to navigate that. So those are just a flavor of the kinds of individuals that see me.
Interesting. Now, what I might be curious about is particularly with regard to the relationship coaching. Say if you have a couple that either has gone through some specific concern, or they're just in the middle of a turmoil of some kind. Do you find that those causes overlap at times, where maybe one or the other member of the relationship is actually going through some substantial life changes, either driven by something happening on their career front, or a new opportunity comes up in their life, or they perhaps have an awareness or an awakening of some kind, and suddenly they're in internal and personal conflict? Do you find that that's occurring as well as kind of the more what I might call generic hey, we're just fighting in a relationship, and we need to find a solution to reduce the conflict?
Absolutely. Actually, I think the majority of the time, each individual is kind of navigating an individual journey of some sort. Um, but let's say, yes, there's situations where maybe one partner more so than the other, they're actually in conflict. There's some stressors that are going on in their life that actually they haven't even brought into the relationship or spoken about deeply with their partner. And it's so interesting to see how their partner might be a little surprised by the impact of it. The other thing that happens a lot in the space is individuals don't realize maybe how much the roots of their family history starts to come into play or has come into play. So whether it is that they don't realize that they're starting to navigate in the way that had been modeled for them by their parents. And so if they kind of experienced some sort of trauma, in their relationship with their parents, or they had a narcissistic mother or father, they start to bring that into the relationship and then their current relationship, and the other partner may not even realize that so much of it might be about what they had learned growing up in their childhood. So that ends up being a very powerful space. So we do go into that in couples work. What I find, DK, is when there's one partner that maybe is dealing with some stuff personally, usually what happens is under the couples umbrella, I do see each individual partner individually so that I get a sense of what's taking place. And then we all come together. And that can be really helpful because often it doesn't come out in the couples work, it comes out separately.
I totally get that, right? Because I can only imagine that, especially when you have a relationship in conflict, that the individuals there are not going to be so willing to share 100% in front of their partner or the counterpart of that relationship. Where individually, with a trusted advisor like yourself, they might open up completely.
Yes, absolutely. And they may not know how to open up. They may not know how to be vulnerable. There's a lot of shame that they may not realize that they have. So it's even challenging to share. I think that comes up often also in the space of intimacy with couples, where you'll have a partner that may be going through something in terms of how they feel about their body. And that might be coming up right in the bedroom. So there's a lot of shame. So often when they share it, then we talk about how they can bring it into the couples work and how we can work through it from a place of empathy and compassion, and hold space for that.
Wow. A lot that you're sharing there. I really appreciate that. Just looking back quickly at the comments, we have Kim Bassett joining us. Welcome, Kim, and so glad you're able to spend a few minutes with us, and thanks so much. And Babita, I wanted to ask another question quickly regarding how couples, we'll just focus on couples specifically right now, how couples find their way to you. Do they come to a realization they need help, and then they just look for somebody with your qualifications and find you that way, or do you find that you're introduced through referral? How do folks find their way to you? And the second question behind that is, when, for anybody out there right now or in the future who's listening to this via podcast audio, and they're realizing and coming to an awareness that they have deep conflict in their relationship for whatever reason, and need help and support, how would they kind of take that first step to reach out to somebody like yourself and begin a healing process?
Sure. So couples find me in a lot of different ways. I think one of the things that I really like to do is I like to do a lot of writing and speaking and putting out valuable content. So often couples find me because they've read something that I've written or they've heard me speak, and it really they connect to that space. So that's one way. Other ways is, yes, they're searching. So they might, be looking for, a couples therapist or a couples coach. They're looking for someone who might have the experience that's worked in the space of maybe infidelity or toxic relationships, or discernment, which is when they're thinking, we might be done, right? We really need help here. This is, we might be getting a divorce. They tend to do that search. And I think just because of my expertise and qualifications, they come across, my name. I think also, it's on social media as well. where I also like to kind of give little snippets. I'm a Gottman trained psychotherapist, and so some couples like the very tool-oriented aspect of that, so they may find me, that way as well, either like through social media on Gottman, or on some of the things that I've put out as well. So those are just sort of the various ways people find me. But I think referrals is also a big part of my practice. I think word of mouth, when you start to get into the space of specializing in a particular area, usually what happens is, DK, is one couple or one individual tends to tell someone else, like they might say like, hey, we really saved our marriage, or, you need to speak to Babita, or, here's someone you can turn to. And then literally that's like the so on and so on. And it's sometimes literally years later, I will have someone reach out to me and say, you know what? We met a couple on an airplane going to Italy that was talking about couples work, and they gave us your name. So that's sort of like, these interesting narratives that like how it all kind of comes back full circle.
Very interesting. And you really underscored a lot of points there. First, that you've got your exposure out there through social media and through your website, so folks can find you. And then I think another key point is that when we do experience a transformative experience through your work and through the work of others as well, that it's so important to share, right? Because you never know who's out there who needs the same support. And if we don't share, they have no idea where to turn, and perhaps don't even know that they could turn to help. And that's an even more desperate scenario if they're not even sure how to move forward from the conflicting position they find themselves in.
It's so true. And if whoever is listening, I really want to say this. Oftentimes it takes one partner in the relationship who tends to maybe find, a therapist or find me and reaches out and says, I don't know if my partner is going to come, but I'm having a really hard time. And so I'll often say, you know what? Come on your own. Because let's start somewhere and tell me about what's taking place. Tell me about what's happening in your relationship and what's happening in your life. And we might start that individual journey. And what they'll find is that it'll help their relationship, that their partner will shift because they are doing the work. And then sometimes because they're doing the work and learning more and more about themselves, they bring their partner in to therapy for a few sessions. So I will often encourage to say, if you feel like there's a struggle or a challenge, not to hesitate. It's okay if you end up making that phone call or that email.
So that takes the barrier out, right, where you don't have to convince your counterpart or your partner to both make the call together. Just make the call up front, reach out, begin to getting the support, and particularly getting more clarity, right, on what the opportunities are to move forward and to find a place of healing. And as we say here, find their way back toward the center of calmness.
Yeah, finding that place of healing. I'm glad you brought that up, because I think some of the things that I've been bringing in to work with my clients is the space around loving kindness meditation, and bringing in meditation into the space, leaning in from a place of compassion towards themselves and in their relationships. And it has made quite a difference, kind of bringing that into the work.
Absolutely. So I wanted to just pause for a moment and greet Renate Prondel, who is joining us. Welcome, Renate. And Renate is asking for your contact information already, which we're going to get to very shortly here. And you mentioned, and actually we talked about that before the show as well, the loving kindness meditation. I wonder if you might expand on that just a bit as I'm pulling up your website address information.
Oh, absolutely. So, I'm a big proponent, right, of meditation generally, but I know for a lot of individuals, they sort of might be able to struggle with that. In the relationship space, the way I bring it in is this. So the loving kindness meditation it's very simple. It's not necessarily about a goal. It's just about the process of showing your self-love and happiness and well-being, and wanting that for your partner. It could be a friend, your partner, relationship, but I'm going to talk about it in the couple space.
Sure.
And usually what I find is the struggle happens when we feel that we don't know how to be empathic to our partner. We don't know how we can connect with them again. And a lot of the core, I think, in relationship work is leaning into that space of empathy and compassion and saying, what does it really feel like to be in their shoes? Can I bring myself there? So the loving kindness meditation it cultivates the space of connecting in a loving way to where your partner might be. So the words that you're using are, may you be connected to love and joy. May I bring you love and joy and safety. May you feel empathy from me. And then back to yourself, may I experience love and kindness towards myself. May I feel happiness and love and empathy towards myself. And then the two individuals can do it together and chant, may we feel empathy and connectedness towards each other. So it's a combination of speaking those words, feeling them, breathing, chanting it, and it literally can just be 15 minutes. That's it, in that space of pause. That's all.
I totally get that. Yeah. And that's so huge, right? To bring a couple together, say, for example, that's in a deep conflict, and even to bring them through a 15-minute exercise where they're not only willing, but they're actually executing this process that you're mentioning and saying these things that they wish empathy for themselves as well as for their partner. That's going to produce a tremendous shift.
It really does. And even in session, it can be very emotional. I find, even for myself, there's a lot of emotions. Couples can also start to find themselves welling up and even crying. Like it's just so, because we don't realize how much we don't allow ourselves to show empathy or compassion. And we don't even know how much is really even there. I think the other part about this meditation that I like is what I try and do with couples is I say, let's also look at trying to replace some of these really negative, dark thoughts we have about our partners that we've created for so long, the narrative we've held. And let's try and replace it with some of the fonder memories because they exist and they've existed. You've been together for a reason, you met for a reason, they were there. So let's also bring that in and let's focus on an image or a memory of both of you during a time when you were connecting and loving each other, a place of fondness. And while you focus on that image, say the words. And going back into that place of loving kindness while they think about that image.
So important, right? Essentially leveraging, if you will, an asset that they've been building for years in most cases, an asset of loving kindness, an asset of shared experience, and to use that visualization. That's even I'm recognizing it's even more powerful than just the words. I think the words open us up, right? But it's shifting us back into those better times, if you will, right? And the sharing and the bond that existed at that moment. Suddenly that can empower. I really see how that can empower your process to bring healing and moving forward.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it really can be quite transformative. And as I mentioned, that's one tool amongst a lot of different ones. But as we think about healing, and especially as we think about this time, with how challenging 2020's been and the pandemic, there's a lot more of individuals leaning into the space of looking at more meaningful spaces, of being more compassionate towards themselves and towards others. I think a lot of what's happened in the pandemic has brought this more to the forefront. So I wanted to bring that into my practice.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think as folks begin to become more aware going forward, like you said earlier, focusing inward and seeing what the opportunities are where they no longer have to set these issues aside, but they can actually face them head on and apply something like this loving kindness meditation, as well as all the other techniques that you offer and your coaching. And I mean, just your leadership and taking them through the process to find a better place for the relationship. So huge. And so I wanted to go through your contact information for those that will be viewing this, or not just viewing this, but hearing this via podcast. And so I've got Babita's main website here, which is babitaspinelligroup.com, and I'll spell that out, BABITA SPINELLI group.com. And then also another website at openingthedoorsPsychotherapy.com, as well as her email address at babitaspinelli@gmail.com. Babita, it was such a pleasure to have you with us today. You've shared so much and provided so many insights, super valuable.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate you making that space for us to have this dialogue.
Thanks, and I look forward to hearing more about the successes you're having with your clients, as well as experiencing the joy that can only come and increase in the world by and the work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you. And for the Center of Calmness, I'm DK Warner.